All right, all right. Welcome, welcome. Glad to see all of you all here. If you guys don't mind, let's do a little quick lightning round intro. Just go down the line and we'll go from there.
I'm Tommy. I'm from Sci-Fi and Armada. I've been in the Solana ecosystem for over 3 years. We were the first hackathon winner of the Solana Serum DeFi hackathon with Sci Options. We did the first acquisition in Solana with Tap Finance. We had the most successful IEO in FTX history, which I guess now has to be locked in stone, for better or worse, I don't know. And we're focused on derivatives, borrow lending, and options with Sci-Fi, and then check out Armada, which is a new platform that helps teams with everything from token launching, tokenomics mechanism, so teams just focus on core products.
Hey everyone, I'm Ori, one of the co-founders of Orca. You may know us as one of the earliest apps in Solana. I think we were actually the third, don't quote me, but tell me if I'm wrong, third app to launch after Serum and Radium way back in the day. Today, Orca is actually now the leading trading protocol on Solana. We drive as much trading volume as all other trading protocols combined, and actually generate over 70% of all liquidity provider fees as well. So it's been a long journey. Been very humbled to see things go up and down since then. It's still very proud to be a part of the ecosystem. I've done a little bit of everything, but mainly I think people know me for design, and still really proud to also champion human-centered design in crypto.
Great. Thanks for having me. I'm Tristan from Zeta Markets. Funnily enough, this is my third Breakpoint at this point. We also started a little over 2 years ago, I guess. We actually won the second kind of Solana hackathon that was out right after these guys, so we've been around the block for a while. We are a kind of perps exchange. We're kind of been around the derivative space for a number of years. That's our bread and butter. We just launched our V2 a couple of months ago, which has been super successful, and we've just about crossed like $1 billion in cumulative volume at this point. So very excited for the future of Solana over the next kind of coming years.
Hi, my name is Cyrus Fazel, the proud founder and CEO of Swissborg. Swissborg, 7 years ago, we had a big dream, which was to offer financial freedom to everyone. We did a great ICO. Since then, we developed an app in Europe, been rocking the scene of crypto for some time, and very excited about how we're doing AllPlus with Swissborg.
Hello, everyone. I'm Kevin. I'm the co-founder and CEO of Keyrock. So it's my first time at Breakpoint, so very happy to be here. Keyrock, we're a digital asset market maker. We've been around for 6 years now. We provide liquidity basically both on exchanges and OTC, on spot markets, options markets. We're making markets on more than 500 of them actually today, and looking forward to discuss how, when, and why DeFi will change everything again.
Well, that's a perfect lead into the main question that we're all here for today. We want to know exactly why and exactly how DeFi is going to change everything. So, Tristan, you're in the middle. I want to know from your perspective at a sort of high level why you think DeFi, specifically on Solana, you guys are all building on Solana, why you think it'll change everything, and then we'll kind of get into the nuances as they appear.
Yeah, I think it's a totally new paradigm, what we're building, and especially on Solana, the design space, or I guess the technical limitations or lack of limitations compared to what's out there. We can really open up the design space and start to actually build highly performant applications on chain. For context, we used to do kind of options, and we built some crazy stuff like first ever like Black-Scholes calculation on chain. It was kind of cool, and we were building funky stuff like that. We're doing a bit less of that now. We're really focusing on perps and trying to build something that is actually competitive with centralized exchanges, but still has the merits of actual decentralization, transparency, self-custody. We think that's definitely possible in Solana. So currently our V2, I would go out there and say it's like an on-chain central limit order book. It's something you can't do anywhere else. We are basically like the fastest on-chain central limit order book. It's pretty impressive. In our V2, we're starting to build our V3 as well. We're trying to go bring it an order of magnitude faster and actually compete with the big dogs in kind of Binance and some of these centralized exchanges. And I'm incredibly excited for some of the technical innovation that's happening with Firedancer. If we're able to get to millions of transactions per second, like there's no reason why we can't build some absolutely killer apps there.
Those are really great points. And I guess, Kevin, I'll pass it to you. Tristan, one of the things that you brought up was being able to compete with some of these bigger centralized players, be it Binance or otherwise. And we can get more into the sort of technical reasons why Solana would be able to do that. But another big reason is the liquidity side, which is less technical and more incentive-based. And Kevin, given your background as a market maker, curious to hear your thoughts on this aspect.
Sure. I mean, I think exactly one of the points that you made, Tristan, that is very interesting is that what matters is being able to match the performance of what you see that is centralized, right? Because at the end of the day, like we're not building an application ourselves, we're users, right? We're users, we're traders, depending on what application we interact with. But you guys are competing with centralized exchanges as well, right? And when we discuss why or how would DeFi change everything, I think it will change everything if it actually makes more sense than CeFi and then TradFi. And that concept of utility and value add that is actually brought to users is what is the most important. And sometimes decentralization in and out of itself is part of that. But I think that it's supposed to be a mean to an end and not an end in and out of itself. And so matching the performance of others that you're actually competing with for the end, which is providing a high quality marketplace, I think that focusing on that is really how we get to more and more adoption. And so we're discussing liquidity, also before, like backstage. And I think that unless you're building a marketplace, liquidity is the second or third thing that you should be thinking about. The first being utility. Like what I'm building, the token that I'm going to be issuing, what purpose does it serve? And if it actually serves a purpose, then you might have liquidity as a problem down the line because people are actually using it, and that's, at the end of the day, a very good problem to have. It's still a problem, which we're working very hard to solve with as many partners as we can. But unless you're building a marketplace, the first thing that should be your focus is not liquidity, it's the utility. If that utility is high, you'll get many users, it will be traded, liquidity will be required, and that's when that component actually comes into play. And I think that, that focus of utility is really a very important part of it, or at least should be.
So speaking of utility, we have the world's leading expert on bringing utility tokens to Solana over here. So
yeah, I mean, if you want to learn more, you should definitely come to my talk tomorrow at 11:35 a.m. on the developer stage about how you can use our programs to get utility. But the high-level gist is there's a lot. Once you launch a token, there's a lot of things to consider, right? Getting liquidity on that token, adding utility, where does governance play, staking, how do you get people into governance? And so we started Armada about 9 months ago trying to scratch our own itch of solving all these problems because you have to focus on DeFi, but then once you launch a token, you get diverted to figuring out how do you create governance-driven tokenomics and things of that nature. And so, I don't want to give too much away because I promise it's an unveiling tomorrow, but that is a core focus, and I think where DeFi really needs to be is actually giving true ownership of these protocols and these financial instruments to these token holders instead of just some gimmick, right?
Yeah, it totally makes a lot of sense. And I guess kind of passing it on to you, Ori, and also you, Cyrus, once we have these tokens, which we'll learn about more from tomorrow, we need places to actually use them. And those applications need to be designed in a certain way, and they need to be user-friendly. So I feel like you two are both great options for the crowd to learn a little bit more on how we can design things well. So Ori, I'll start with you. What are your thoughts on design and DeFi on Solana?
Yeah, design for DeFi in general until now has in many ways been really just a trade-off, I would say, or like a series of trade-offs, I think, between what we know we want to do and like the lessons we've already learned from Web 2 and what we really want to be able to deliver people in Web 3. Like we talk a lot about innovation, but in some ways we're not necessarily like pushing the envelope for UX as a whole, because in Web 2 for the longest time, we've been able to deliver like split-second reactions, and people are used to that, right? And so I think it's not like controversial to say that the UX has not been anywhere close to what like the average person expects. But we're finally, I think, getting to this turning point where finally the performance is actually on Solana, like built in, right? To Tristan's point, like with Firedancer, I think we're going to start seeing a really like impressive level that people will actually be able to use the same way that they use in Web 2. And so no longer, I think, will design be as much about, okay, like, let me talk to the engineers and figure out of the million technical constraints, what are like the one thing out of the design that I can actually accomplish, but thinking about things holistically to how do we actually deliver an experience that is fresh, that is something that is not actually possible in Web 2 and is still very desirable by users. So I think this is also where Solana will start to differentiate itself, because more and more I've seen the narrative start to shift where so much of the energy in other ecosystems is still figuring out how to scale, right? And that's something, if we have it built in, will really unlock a lot of creativity for both designers and developers. So I'd say, yeah, just draw on what we've already learned from Web 2 and take advantage of the fact that for the first time in crypto, we can actually apply those lessons.
Yeah, I'd like to add to that is that, I mean, things like, I was not a big Solana fan. And this ecosystem, I didn't know it very well, and there's different reasons for that. I didn't really take the time for it. But when I got to talk to our tech team that's been developing in the back for some time and going to the hackathons and meeting the community, I started realizing there's probably more than I should know about it. And I think that more importantly, the technology that was built on Solana was really for that scalable mass market. And when we started our business in 2016 and 2017, our goal was always to do how to mix the off-chain and on-chain world, right? So how do you get the best of the FX, SEX worlds, stocks eventually, and how you bring DeFi. And essentially, Solana was the only way that we were able to aggregate order books, right? Because all other chains today is EVMs is all about AMMs, right? And the essential limit order books that you have today on Orca, for example, on Phoenix, was only possible on Solana. So for us, we had to go through Solana, and obviously today we're very proud that we finally got to our meta exchange, that we bring those two different worlds. So for us, that's where I got to be a maxi on Solana and love it. And I think so that the end game, with what we want to do for users is just the ability where someone could place a trade. He won't figure out it's going to be eventually on this exchange or that exchange, but you're going to have a seamless experience. And I think so right now, just showing it backstage just earlier is like now with Swissborg today, anyone could create an account in Europe, fund your account with their credit card or their local currency, send it with Swift within a few seconds to a few minutes, and then exchange, get your best token, Helium or Solana or different other tokens, and you will pass through Orca or through Phoenix, but not necessarily even knowing it. Some people will be very happy about it, and some people just don't really care about where you're going, the route you're going. You're just getting the best price and the best service and the best experience. And I think so that's exactly what we've been working really hard for now over 7 years, and thanks to Solana, we're making it. So I'm super excited.
That's awesome. It's always good to hear stories of people who, like you said, you didn't like Solana in the beginning, and now, here you are speaking at a panel full of people who like Solana. And I think that's something that I'd like to zero in on a little bit more, because when we talk about users in crypto, there's obviously a huge component of people who are EVM loyalists or Ethereum loyalists or L2 loyalists. And whether we like it or not, this is going to be a big user cohort of people that myself and all of you through all of your products, and maybe even everyone here, in this building today, will have to convince those people that not only are the products in Solana maybe better or faster or have this technical advantage or that technical advantage, but that there has to be some kind of forcing function. So I guess we could just go down the line and hear some thoughts on how we're going to get users from the EVM ecosystem into the SVM ecosystem.
I think it starts with getting trading mostly on chain. There's no reason for Solana DeFi to not be the best place to execute a trade. I think there shouldn't be so much of a focus, especially in the early days of a token. You should not worry about centralized exchange listings. I mean, they can help with marketing and to some degree, but if we can get liquidity on chain and for other users to have to participate in that ecosystem, they are forced to make a swap on Solana. The onboarding process to the wallet is a little bit painful, but as soon as they make that swap, people are like, holy cow, this just settled instantaneously. And that's eye-opening for a lot of people. And so I think the more conversations I've had with people in those other ecosystems, they just haven't had that experience because they've never been forced to use Solana. And so I think that's a key factor.
Yeah. I think it's all of that, but also just building experiences that don't yet exist, right, in EVM. And I think that's something where, well, I guess, should I spoil? Well, we'll be announcing a new product in probably like an hour on stage from Orca, but I think people will be really excited about this because, frankly, just like LPing is so expensive if you have to pay actual gas fees. And I think this is why we're starting to be able to unlock like an experience that feels not only fluid and seamless and fast, but actually is going to make people more money on Solana, right, in the long term. Because when you're constantly sending transactions, opening and closing positions and rebalancing, as you should be as a really savvy, active LP, that cuts into your bottom line, right? And yes, like DeFi, it is for this group about making money. Like this is people's jobs. And so ultimately, if their goal is to come here and make money, we need to give them tools that allow them the possibility to do that more effectively, that empower them with the insights, with the data, and with the convenience that they need. And like finally, I believe like this is becoming possible in a way that personally I'm really excited about.
Yeah, really great points, and I totally agree on building kind of differentiated products on Solana. You know, everyone talks about only possible on Solana, and that's kind of become the kind of rally. But it is really true, like, who cares about building the same kind of Uniswap fork on like a new chain? That's kind of it's been done to death at this point, and it's not super interesting. People are building actually like super innovative, cutting edge stuff on Solana, like order books, which is what we're obviously big into, provide really great price discovery versus looking at Uniswap profitability and some of the questions around that for LPs. You get incredible price discovery on order books. It's something that you can only build on Solana, and I think there's a real reason for once people have actually made that hop, jumped onto the chain, they start using it, and they're like, wow, this is actually works really well. We've also spent a lot of time on UX and trying to make that a pleasurable experience. If you come on there, transactions are failing, the chain's going down or things like that, you can't withdraw your money. That's kind of a scarring experience. But with network stability being a lot higher, I think people are more willing to kind of bridge and park their funds on chains like Solana. And once you start using the dApps and see the kind of rich ecosystem that they have there, it's pretty hard to get away from that. Like a kind of personal story from me is I really don't use like centralized exchanges much anymore, mostly because they've just shut down in a lot of the countries that I'm KYC'd in. But I just use Jupiter now because it's like I want to buy some Solana. I just don't want to go through logging into centralized exchange, mucking around, setting up an account. It's just super easy. Go there, plug in your ledger, swap. You get really good prices. It's super seamless. The UX is incredible. I just don't want to go back at that point.
I mean, if I'm able to take that question and not necessarily just look at EVM people, but the entire population, right? We have, let's say, 250 million people that are in crypto, probably have less than 1% of those people that are actually into DeFi. So that means we still have 99% of people just buying tokens and just figuring out on centralized exchanges. And that's probably the real stats. So I think what we see here is that there's been a lot of sexes that have their own political agendas on which chains and what things, tokens to list, and how these cartels essentially manage to do their things. Some of them are very open-minded and are very cool. Some of them have really pushed their own products, obviously, because it still is a war between blockchains, still a war against essentially stable coins and many of that in that thing. So I think what we need as well is these big platforms is ability to have listing of tokens that is more transparent and to make sure that there's volume on sexes and indexes as well. And I think so Swissborg for sure, I mean, we really want to because we had the problem of getting listed on sexes and all that. We went through that. We did all these ICOs. So we think that we need to recalibrate a bit, fight these type of cartels, and make sure that communities of different platforms could just list their tokens on these different platforms. And this is exactly what we're doing with Swissborg and how we're going to be using different, Camino and different other amazing dexes like Orca in order to bootstrap this liquidity and then get listed on Swissborg by the community and not because just one king or queen decided to make a favor or get a $5 million supply tokens for that listing. So, yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that on this, the starting point is who are you trying to bring over? And as Sarah said, like, there's 250 million people in crypto, 1% in DeFi, but what about the rest? There's still 20x more that are not even in crypto yet. And so who are you trying to convince? Of course, there's always going to be loyalists to certain techs. To be honest, like, I'm not an engineer. I'm the most tech pragmatic people you can imagine. As long as it does what it needs it to do, I don't care. And I think that many people think like that. There are still some steam engine fanatics, right? You're not going to get them in a Tesla, but you don't care. Because yes, you have a very small core that will never change their mind, so be it. But what matters is how do you attract the rest, and they're definitely to a point made both by Tristan and Ori, like building things that can only be done on Solana. This is why you choose Solana, not because it is Solana. It's just that I'm doing something that makes sense, that can only be done here. I know it's not often you would see me on stage, hyping some work done by Jump, but clearly FireDancer is something that is very interesting to make it even more so only possible on Solana. So it is something that is positive for the ecosystem as a whole, but also positive to bring people that don't even look at the ecosystem, that don't care about the ecosystem. The only thing they care about is what value do I get by using this product. And I think definitely that is where I would focus it. And some of them you will never convince. Fair enough, because you shouldn't even try to convince them in the first place.
So the maxis are condemned, is what I'm hearing.
I mean, if they're happy, that's great, right? It's not condemned, but they're just doing their thing, and that's it.
Sure. So, Tristan, I want to come back to you in terms of, we've talked about various things that can get users of all kinds, be it the ETH users, total crypto users, or just everyone in general. And I know that Zeta has recently done like the points program. And so the question I have for you is just maybe a little bit more details on how you're thinking about that in general and what kind of user you think that will bring in. And if you think that's different from the user that you might be trying to target a year, 3 years, 5 years down the line, and then we'll kind of hear from everyone.
Yeah, it's a great question. So yeah, I would say there's a lot to building an exchange outside of just writing smart contracts. People think, you can just fork whatever and suddenly you can build the next Uniswap. It's not really how it works. Liquidity is pretty sticky and the user base obviously as well. Where we're at, I guess, in our current iteration of our product, we've got a bunch of great kind of market makers on our platform that are kind of native to the Solana ecosystem that are really strong. So you can trade in, pretty decent size and do stuff like that. Now it's really about, we are kind of in a bear market, or at least coming out of one, who knows. So bringing in users on the kind of taker side was top of mind for us to kind of fulfill that other side of the kind of demand curve. And it's really this chicken and egg problem. Like, do you want to come in there if there's no liquidity and the order books are super empty, which everything kind of was in the super early days? We've kind of fixed that problem. Now it's like waiting for the users to come in, and they've been slowly lining up and coming in, and then you kind of bootstrap from there. So what we call Z-Score is kind of our points program. It's a way for people to come in, trade on the exchange, and a way for us to kind of reward the top traders on our exchange. It's based on scoring system that takes into account both the volume on the taker side that you've traded on our exchange, as well as your kind of P&L and profitability. So we want to go out there and say, hey, these are our top, couple of thousand users who have been super loyal to the exchange. They've been using it, for the last year or two, say. They've been putting heaps of volume through the platform, and we want to reward them, obviously for coming in and providing the service. And hopefully over that period of bootstrapping, I guess, up until kind of token distribution, we're going to, rally a bunch of people around that and kind of really grow the exchange from there. It's definitely worked on like the ETH side. I think a lot of these kind of DEXs have really managed to do amazing things with tokens and some of their kind of incentive programs and the ways that they gamify it and get creative. So hopefully we can kind of take some of that inspiration and kind of rally people around the DeFi apps on Solana and get a bunch of really good adoption there.
Can I ask a question?
Be my guest.
Do we think points is the right step, a step in the right direction for DeFi, or do we think it's a step backwards? Like if we're promoting transparency and democratization and stuff like that, points, if we're talking about it's for a future token, then like there's not a lot of transparency about like what they actually mean and how they work together in these systems.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question to answer off the bat. I mean, I think it's really down to the project and how transparent they are with tokenomics. Like, we are working on that actively right now and hoping to ideally put a white paper out on our tokenomics to kind of explain, I guess, distribution mechanisms, what the actual token does, some more details around that. So to the extent that we can involve the community and be really kind of community-driven around that and build something that actually provides value, I think that's like a good step.
Yeah, I think we've seen them working on the incentivization piece. I know it's new topic, and we see a lot of Solana teams doing that. So it was just a controversial, like, interesting discussion we had over lunch today. So sorry to put you on the spot, Tristan.
All good.
Sometimes you need a little degen action to get the things going, you know? Yeah, he knows.
Maybe just if I can say one thing, because for once, I've been talking mainly about utility and not liquidity, whereas we're a market maker. And I think that on the incentives, at the end of the day, if you're looking at real market makers, so real delta-neutral market makers, what do they want? What do we want? We want to trade. We want volume, we want flow, right? So ironically, the markets that have the easiest time attracting market makers are the ones that need it the less, because there's already liquidity. But that's just how it is. If you are actually delta neutral and you don't have anything else on your agenda that is even more shady than just incentivation, but an actual delta neutral market maker, you want flow. When you don't have it, you need the market makers the most, but how do you get them there? And I think that there's no way, having been doing this for 6 years in crypto now, it never comes to a point where you don't need market makers anymore because liquidity just happens. It doesn't. Even on the bigger markets, that need is still there. The difference is that you need more incentives at the beginning because you actually don't have what the market makers want the most and need the most to be able to do their job. So I do think that there is a place for incentives to kickstart markets because liquidity doesn't just happen organically. But I agree with you that this should be done very transparently and making sure that the incentives are clear and that they are open to everyone. Like this, market making incentives don't need to be some, closed doors deal with, a specific assignment. This can be a program that is open to anybody can be a market maker. You're just open to orders. There you go, you're a market maker. So anybody can. It's just that if the incentives are transparent and big enough, you have people that actually start to do it professionally, and that actually brings value to everyone on the market. So I think that the main debate is not so much on whether incentives are needed or not, because I think there will always be. But the question is how they are actually provided and how transparent they are. And I think that if you can get the right balance, that's where you have something that actually benefits the entire market.
Do you feel like having the incentives be maybe overly transparent, just to steelman the other side, can be a weakness in terms of the gameability of the incentive structure? So if I know for sure, if I take a losing trade on Zeta, like Tristan's going to pay me a lot of money, I'll lose every trade. I mean, I might lose every trade anyways, but having like very transparent incentives means that the system is like perfectly gameable. And I'm just wondering from your perspective, does that alter, like, is there some advantage to maybe obfuscating some portion of how the incentives work?
I think that all systems are potentially gameable. The problem becomes if it's only gameable to some of the actors, because there's too big of an asymmetry of information. So yes, having something that is fully transparent means that you're going to have more people potentially, working on gaming the system, but that's how you get to something efficient. So I would take that paradigm every day of the week versus one where you have 4 players that have a completely different setup that nobody knows about, and these guys are always winning. So I do think that having something that is gameable by the greater mass of people is better, because this is how you get to an efficient market, because everybody has the same information. Of course, markets are never efficient, but it's as close to that as you can get.
But if I may jump in this one, I think so, like, from the early DeFis to the summer DeFi until right now, what we've seen is predators, right? They come, they farm the token, then they go to the next city, they burn it again, they take your token, they burn it again. I think so what we really have to, as DeFi, which is in Solana or in other different ecosystems, is you really have to create a community that's loyal. And that loyal should be done through game theory, and of course, I think it should be transparent. But what you want is as well to look on the long run, right? And how you could really make sure that these guys are not predators and are not just feeding predators that just want to dump on the next guy after. Because that game, if we continue to do it, I'm pretty sure DeFi will never get to its real mission, right? I think so. That's the thing that you need to do, and how you play it out is definitely not easy because we're still in the money game. But that's how you have to really protect the people and make sure that in all these different cycles that we go through, you really reward those that have been with you for a long time. And again, this is what I really fell in love with Solana when I saw the token going down to $10. I was like, okay, it's finished. This thing is going. And on the opposite, like, people were here and still like, now we're building on, and we'll continue to bring this this ecosystem to where it deserves to be.
I think it's like hard to guarantee that like community's loyal though, right? Like you can't vet every person in the community, and like with an open global state machine like Solana, like you have to always, as a builder, you have to always account for there's going to be bad actors and adversaries always trying to like bring your community down, trade against you, whatever it is, right? So for everyone making a buck, someone's losing a buck to some degree. So I think it's also about not just building a great community, but building a sustainable ecosystem and sustainable products, like first and foremost.
I think it's worth drawing a line in the sand too between really the pure like protocol level and then all the applications that are built on top of these protocols, right? I think for people who are really moving at the protocol level, so for something like Orca, like liquidity providers or these more degen traders, sometimes we say it, like what really matters to them and all that matters to them is the bottom line. And for something like that, I think generally, at least personally, I lean to a more like pure approach. Complicated tokenomics, all of that. It just gets things very, unnecessarily complicated, right? I think it makes, it does lead to this unsustainable types of like incentives when people start like mucking around with that. And that's really more like marketing spend in my mind, like bootstrapping liquidity, that sort of thing. But then when it comes to actually like providing, again, these like end user experiences where the protocols are packaged in something more than just the base layer, often I think people are willing to pay for a little bit of extra convenience. And also, like, this is also where you can start building a little bit more loyalty. So let's say, like, in a game, there's definitely some value to being able to like trade the game tokens directly within the game. And then maybe also some value to the protocol, then actually providing some type of like reward system for trading within that game's marketplace. And all that makes sense, right? Like I personally, even if something is available cheaper elsewhere, like I'll buy a product on Amazon because I just trust it. I know it'll be delivered to my door in 2 days, like, et cetera, right? So I think for me, often I think on the protocol level, more pure makes sense. And then when it comes to these, more packaged and polished experiences, it makes more sense to think about something like a points or a loyalty program.
It's a lot of interesting different perspectives here. I like the flow of the conversation. Got my friend right here. He's doing a good job. Round of applause for this guy right here.
Get him up on stage.
Yeah, next panel, you're up, man. So we're coming up a little bit on time. I wanted to give everyone at least like a minute just to give a little closing remark, if you will. I know there's some different announcements that you got to reserve, so maybe don't talk on those. I don't want to spill all of your alpha. But Tommy, why don't you go ahead and...
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm just really excited for this like next wave of Solana DeFi. We have like a bunch of incredible projects like Zeta that have been building for over 2 years now, but haven't really taken the next step in, building a transparent tokenomics ecosystem and true community with like ownership over everything that they're building in that community. And which, I mean, it's a great. There's reason for that. It takes a lot. And so that's kind of why we jumped into Armada 9 to 12 months ago. And we really just want to help everyone in this new wave of Solana DeFi take care of everything token related and governance related so they can just focus on their core product. And we can make DeFi change everything again. Yes, please. Join the fleet.
Woo! Join the fleet.
Join the fleet.
So I'll take my minute to really kind of push for, I think, all of us to still be really aware of like the changing narrative around Solana and crypto in general. I remember thinking a year ago at Breakpoint, like how lucky we would be if we would start to see that narrative shift around Solana actually being a viable option. I think for everyone here, it's very obvious that Solana is not only a viable, but actually a very proven option. But I think so often we see things like on Twitter, people are just like still ranting and raving about Solana in a way that looks like, frankly, kind of cultish and kind of terrifying. Like, that's probably not the way to get people to come over. I think, being really rational about it is a better way. Like, make the technical argument. The technical argument actually holds water and is not based on this kind of cult methodology. And yesterday I was joking with someone that they're not a Solana maxi, they're a Solana realist. And I think we're starting to see more people take that path. So I'd encourage you to extend an olive branch in all your discussions.
Yeah, I really like that take. Yeah, I think for me, it's just incredible the amount of progress we've made in the last 2 years. I mean, I guess from a non-crypto perspective, doesn't feel like a lot of time, but for all of us, at least as protocol builders, like that's a hell of a lot of time to just like hunker down and build good stuff. And I still remember getting started in 2021. Our product was pretty flaky and rushed, and the market was going crazy, and people were kind of throwing all this like money around and trying all these different products, and they would break all the time, and the network would go down. And you see where we are at now, and things are just completely like polar opposite. The chain's been up for 6 months with absolutely zero kind of downtime. We've got these local fee markets that have really helped in terms of some of the performance there. In terms of some of the apps that they've come a long way, they're much better, at least from our exchange. It's really, really snappy. We've used a lot of the cutting edge technology like Geyser to be able to actually like update our order books within like the same block and stuff like that. So it almost feels like a centralized exchange now, and I'm like, I wouldn't have thought this is even possible 2 years ago. So it's really cool how much we've innovated on that, and obviously with a bunch of new improvements like the new kind of runtime and FireDancer and all these other things, like I'm super psyched to just dig into the code there, build super cool stuff that's on the cutting edge. And then further than that, there's obviously great teams innovating on token stuff such as Armada, so I'm keen to kind of dig into more of that and see kind of more of that ecosystem flourish.
Yeah, I mean, I'm super thrilled. I mean, today we have 800,000 users here in Europe, and in the next cycle, we're probably going to at least triple or quadruple that, right? And we really have embraced the Solana ecosystem and letting it being our trading backbone through Orca and others. And right now, it looks like Armada is about the token economics. Here you see the spot trading, the perp trading, the market making. So I think what maybe Swissquote would bring with at least this group is how to have maybe a potential launchpad for new projects that want to work and be on Swissborg, or as well mature projects that want to be listed in the most fair way possible. So I'm really excited about that, to be honest. And as well, yeah, how it could fuel the new awesome projects. I still believe that ICOs is something that could grow, that could really make amazing community. That's how we started, and many cool projects have done that. And looking forward to bring, the best projects to a loyal community and make them super users on these next decentralized applications on Solana.
Yeah, on my end, I think to share a thought on also the title of the panel. Like I look at it more as something to aspire to rather than an actual statement. If you look at what we're building, like all together, being Solana or others, but everything that is decentralized is what is the point? Like why are we doing all this, right? And so I think that on one end you have a very centralized system that is extremely easy, extremely convenient, but that comes with a lot of constraints, because you always depend on somebody else to do what you actually want to do, right? There's always a third party there, and you depend on their constraints to actually use the product. On the other hand, you have fully decentralized systems that are extremely hard to build, sometimes still extremely hard to use, but that come with a lot of freedom, right? And I think that the point of investing our time in ecosystems such as Solana is that when you see that the technology allows you to get as close as possible from the best of both worlds, so keeping the freedom that you have that comes inherently with decentralization, while keeping as much as possible of the conveniency and the ease of use that you have with centralized system. And I think that when you have tech that allows you to do that, and all the things that are only possible of Solana is part of that, I think that definitely it's when the statement, the title of the panel becomes more and more of a reality rather than just wishful thinking, and that's what Kirok is quite excited about. Yeah.
Woo! Well, to this guy, Kevin, Cyrus, Tristan, Ori, and my boy Tommy right here, thank you guys for coming.